Hello and welcome to another episode of the Way We Grow podcast, a production of the Craft Growers Network. I am your host, Nick Wolfe. Today our guest is Saśa, the Slovenian Hobbit. Welcome to the show.
Hey man, nice
Hey.
to have you.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you back as a guest. You've kind of been a great co-host for Gabby and myself over the course of this podcast as we've started it up and providing a different worldview than what we have. Where can people find you on Instagram before we get started?
Right now on Instagram, it's very complicated for US citizens to find me actually because my Instagram name is gartenzwerg.by.herbetics, which is actually Gartenzwerg is a term in German which means a garden dwarf, the caregiver of your garden, in German culture there's people who have a lot of people have these gardens and they have this little dwarf hidden inside of the garden
Sure.
somewhere. He's hiding. I actually a few years ago I did it purposely when I opened up my own company that I wanted to target the German speaking market. Actually, I was not interested in US market at that time or any other market. So I purposely did it because I'm small guy. I have a little beard and I have like ponytail, and I'm a dwarf. I'm a garden dwarf. So this garden dwarf is Gartenzwerg. But
Nice.
I will open up account now very soon. I think before this video goes out, it will be Slovenian Hobbit. So this will be me, will be my picture, and I opened the rock 2 months ago with you guys. For me, still, I live in a place that is very much illegal to flower cannabis. You can grow it, but you cannot flower it.
Right.
So that kind of area, and it's very interesting times for decriminalization and legalization in Europe now. It's going up and down, man. It's when you look to Germany now in this moment, it's very, very, very difficult situation because we don't know in this moment if they're gonna make it illegal again.
Mm.
They are talking about it that they will forbid it again. Actually, I cannot even think about how can this how people will go on the street. It will be a riots.
Yeah.
This will be problem because they allowed people to grow at home 3 plants. They can possess like 50 grams a month,
This is in
which
Germany.
this is in Germany, yeah.
Yeah.
So now because of the government is not there, it's like they are building the government, which is not it's not going well now, and now the parties are on the rise, which is actually against the legalization. So
Mm.
they want to make it illegal again,
Sure.
which is impractical. I don't know how it's possible to do that now, but let's see. Okay, and I will not talk about it. We have guests who Vincent Wheat was on the show a few weeks ago. We'll do another show with him in soon, so he maybe can tell much more than me. But I hear something, because I'm in Austria, but I live in Slovenia. But I have a business in Austria with clones, so we are quite depending on the German market also. So it's like
Right.
maybe in a few months I cannot ship anymore there again. you know,
That
yeah.
would be crazy. That would be really unfortunate.
Yeah, I will
Um,
keep you updated about this definitely. So
For sure. Well, we know that, you have this awesome clone business where you're selling unique genetics that are sought after in the European market from some of our previous talks. And so I would definitely suggest the guests go back and listen to those so that we don't have to retouch on too much of that here. Because I really want to get into your growing style, knowing that you are in a completely different market than what the US is, and that you have some, let's call it, past experience with growing flower out in different scenarios and settings. So what were some of, like, so I always like to start this show with talking about some of your first experiences with plants, and I do feel like we talked about that before, but if you don't mind kind of taking it back just a little bit for some of the newer listeners and telling us a little bit about your personal history with plants, where it all started and how it evolved into cannabis, or if it evolved from cannabis into, a desire to grow vegetables or other things in general. Just kind of take us a little bit along your growing story.
Good question, actually, that you mentioned. If vegetables were my first inspiration, definitely yes. I grew up in a garden of my grandmother, which in that time, in Yugoslavian time, it was in the 50s, 60s. Everybody after the Second World War grew food at home because
Right.
it was, after the wars, normally everything is destroyed, all the
Right.
economy is gone, so you are depending on your own few meters of garden to have maybe better food than, you know, you can do what you do. So I grew up in a very beautiful, beautiful garden, which my grandmother cared so much about, and she gave this knowledge to my mother, and my mother also to me. But my grandmother actually was more of a, because I grew up and my grandmother's still alive, and she actually uh, let me play in her garden all the time, and I had to do work also. My first
Yeah.
experiences with plants is potato, tomato, salad, herbs, a lot of herbs. I have, my grandmother even let me have my own patch when I was like 5 years old.
That's cool.
Yeah, she said you
Do you
are
remember what
carrying,
you grew?
yeah, carrots. It was carrots and some salad, one tomato.
Nice. Yeah.
But you have to understand that in these times, we did not buy seeds. All of the seeds were made by my grandmother for that.
Sure.
You take, because this is heirloom varieties.
Right.
Today we know that this is heirloom tomato, but at that time we didn't know about anything else. We just you have one variety of tomato or two maybe, and one variety of carrots, one variety of cabbage, one variety of potato or two maybe.
Sure.
Not a lot, but all of these were very stable, and they performed in the terroir. It was the stuff that grew here for 50 years already
Sure.
before
Right.
they selected so much
It was
that
acclimated to
it
the
was
to the
acclimated.
climate and to
It
the
was, yes.
yeah. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, and this is also the basic knowledge for cannabis after.
Okay.
We're talking about it right now because this is the basic knowledge how you select. Yeah.
Sure.
Uh, because outdoor growing, you have to understand, until 2003, I'd never saw a plant growing indoors.
Okay.
Yeah. From my childhood, from the end of 70s until the 2003, I never saw a plant grow under light. Never.
Okay.
I always under sun. Always. With
Sure.
with all the environment, which means very good soil. Very good soil means for me, I live on a river, very near a river. And the river bed, when the river, this river is very big and it's not controlled 100 years ago, and it went, how you say, it flood a lot, yeah,
Yeah, like overflowed.
overflowed, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of sediment. The river is alpine river. It has a lot of magnesium, calcium, a lot of iron, a lot of
Sure.
trace elements already in the water. So it's like, and the river is like few meters away from my house here. It's a big river. It's called Mura,
Okay.
and yeah. So to go to cannabis, then like growing up in a garden in Yugoslavia at my grandmother's place. We have animals. We have pigs. We have chicken. We had rabbits. We grew. One of very near there was a butchery here. It's like there is a lot of it's like a farm. Like
Sure.
yeah. So I saw a lot of reality in the beginning. Food production was for me very, very normal. When I was 10 years old, I knew everything, about
Yeah.
food, about food, about the plant to the ripeness of a fruit and produce that fruit, or even if it's not vegetable, it's meat. I saw everything, you know.
Right.
Traditionally in Slovenia at that time when I grew up, we used to kill two pigs, and in the winter time like now. And as kids, we were all there, you know, to see that, you know, how an
Sure.
animal was opened and everything was taken out and all the meat was used and every part of the animal was used.
Mm-hmm.
Really, every part. Not a lot was thrown away.
Yeah.
So it is like that, you know, when you grow up in this kind of environment that you actually use everything you produce yourself. And then when the first cannabis came, when I was 13 years old, you know, and because it
Was
was
that
not,
was that the first time you smoked or the first time that you
fir-
saw it grow?
first time I smoked
Okay.
was when I was 12 or 13 years old.
Okay.
And then because I saw it is a flower and it has seeds inside, for me was of absolutely the first thing I did was take out the seeds and plant it.
Sure.
I wanted to see it at once, you know.
Absolutely.
This was 1993.
93.
1993, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I planted them. So of course something grew, but you know, in the beginning was like, you know, 1993 and then 1994 I got seeds from my cousin. And he got it from a guy that came from India.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a lot of land races here. So
For
it's
sure.
like, yeah, everybody that grew here, we call it domačica, which means the
Domaćica.
homegrown, you know.
Okay.
Doma means home.
Right, like
Doma,
domicile. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You have it's like, this is homegrown. So homegrown means you did it yourself on your garden, yeah. And the domačica was really like the average weed with maybe 5-6% THC only, yeah.
Sure.
But it was land raised, but already acclimated, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So then in 96, I got some seeds from Amsterdam. And those were like, you know, we grew all the time from 93 to 96.
So are you 16 now?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So you were born in 1980?
1979.
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. But the thing is, you know, in the last podcast I told you about Mongolia. I was 19 years old. I was wrong. I was 21 when I was in
Oh,
Mongolia.
okay.
Yeah.
Like 2001 then?
Yeah, I was at that moment when you asked me, didn't count real, but I was 21 years old when I was in Mongolia. Yeah.
Okay.
But when I was 16, you know, I left, you know, when you went to high school here in Austria. I mean, I was born in Slovenia, you know, in Yugoslavia. And I went to primary school in Yugoslavia. And then the war came, and we were, after that, we were own country, Slovenia, with a separate country, not Yugoslavia anymore. So, and then the high school came, and high school, I could go to Austria to high school for 4 years. I went over the border.
Sure.
And after high school, you graduate with matura, and then you can go to study to university. Yeah. So I went to Ljubljana, which is back to Slovenia, you know.
Okay.
So I was in Austria, and I went back to Slovenia. And now I'm back in Austria again for my company because they allow growing cannabis until you flower. But let's jump back. Yeah. The before anything came from Amsterdam, the things that were grown here were very phenotypically very different from each other, and all of the stuff was grown outdoors in compost, you know, compost gardening style that we do. You know, when you do vegetables, when you do everything else, you know how to do anything. It's the same thing with cannabis.
Sure.
It's the same code that the plants speak the same language.
And
Definitely.
I'm assuming you're doing this in some sort of either like raised bed or
Yeah.
like hugel culture,
Yeah.
sort of like well tilled or well cared for
Yeah.
plots of land or little patches of earth.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, like you're applying compost to replenish all of your organic matter and making
Yeah.
sure that the microbial colonies there are healthy and you have good vermicompost activity in there. And So I mean, yeah,
But
that's
then still, it's from plant to plant, it's different, The
sure.
same plant in the same bed, one will perform, one will not. And
Yeah.
why? Because they have a different background for feeding. They have a different background from parental side, and then they have, because of that, they have this different demand for the food.
Hmm.
An OG from Pakistan, I say always that the OGs come from Pakistan, Afghanistan region. It is Afghanistanica. It is not indica, it's not sativa, it's not ruderalis, it's the Afghanistanica, the base of this family of plants. It has, it does not demand a lot of nitrogen. It does not. But if you lack calcium, magnesium, and iron with these OG related plants, you always have problems.
Mm.
OG always want to feed on the trace elements so much. And my assumption is because it's coming from these regions where there is not a lot of nitrogen at all in the ground. Nitrogen, there is a lot of other stuff, but nitrogen is not so much present. There is
Sure.
not, yeah, you know. So with other strains like sativa related or more to the equator, let me say, of course, a lot of rich soil, yeah,
Right.
because everybody knows equator is volcanic activity is high. So you have even the trace elements, you all have this composting, which is really all the time. There is like layer of compost there, which is unbelievable. Yeah,
Hmm.
microbial life. Always I say to people, when a plant is outdoors, planted in the ground, not in a plastic container, but outdoors in the ground, it is like communicating with the base again, you know.
Right.
And there is like this tale of, there is enzymes and they live in these cities, The roots
Hmm.
go and there is cities around those roots. And some
Okay.
of these cities are producing, for example, there is enzymes there. And these
Yeah.
enzymes go to work and the plants one day says to them, today, today I need a lot of zinc. And they go to work and they
Right.
gather the zinc and the mycorrhizal it's transporting the zinc to the veins and it's going up to the plant, yeah.
For
And
sure.
the next day the same or other organisms are trying to get iron or trying to get molybden or trying to get sulfur for the
Sure.
plant, but it's what the plant tells those things it comes,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, you
In
get
closed
the
containers is
exudate
different.
signals. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it makes so much sense in a like in a limited amendment sort of way where you're kind of just maintaining a we've talked about it before with other guests where if you look at an organic substrate that's high in organic matter, you have sand, silt, and clay as your main constituents of the soil, right? And then you have whatever else is in there, whether it be like leaf litter or more organic matter, if there's any sort of like pumice or stones in the soil that allow for drainage, a higher sand percentage in your soil. You have this like battery, and the more that you care for it or the larger it is, then that like battery has like a greater potential for the plant, so the plant can tap that battery and get all that energy it needs. Even though it's not energy, it's the nutrients that supply for the energy cycles from the sun. But I feel like it's a good analogy to look at it where you are like you care for the substrate takes care of the plant, versus in like a hydroponic setting you just need to make sure that your hydroponic nutrients are correct and that the pH and the EC are where you want it, and then your irrigation practices are in place. Not saying that you don't need irrigation practices in place for, especially if you're in like this uh, like directly in the ground, you don't want to oversaturate and create some muddy or anaerobic condition.
No, exactly. And that is
Yeah.
very good point because people ask me when they come to my facility and they see the mother plants like grown more than 6 months. Like sometimes I have two plants in a 1 liter pot. It depends on the strain. Yeah, we have one Garanimals. clone, which is also from Finest, American clone. We put two plants in 11-liter container, it grows up. And you can get a lot of clones like that, and you have to feed it a lot. And then people ask me, how do you do that? Like in 11 liter, because they are looking like trees, really dark green. Dark green, green as lime green. Some strains has not to be too dark because then they are too overfed.
Right.
You have to know your strains to know
Right.
that, right? The dark green are normally the OGs that I have in my company, but the lighter green are more the sativa-ish, the plank and the big butt yeah. But the thing is, with feeding, which people always forget, is that the roots need a lot of oxygen. If you grow in soil, which is actually a mix of light mix, what we have, which is speed based, a lot of perlite is inside. It's actually very near hydroponics already, because
Right.
this is not living soil, what we used to do, because we need for production. And if I would grow at home, when I do, I never do any I do living soil. I don't do not alive soil. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But in the company, where there is schedule and protocol, and it's a different story. If you
Right.
go
Well,
to these big scales, it's a total different story. It always people are fighting each other against, if you're organic or ecological grower, or if you are a hydro grower and chemical, but
right.
actually it's not right to actually. Uh, it depends on your environment and depends on your demands.
Right. It's setting dependent. Absolutely. You can't just say
Yeah.
that one style needs to work for everyone. That's a little
No.
centric, I guess. It just doesn't really work. Because yeah, people have different demands in their gardens and they have different desires for their outcomes. So you can't just say that one is the only way to get it done. But let's take it back a little bit. So because I want to kind of learn about your transition from, it sounded like you had your one outdoor crop a year of whatever was growing there. You'd save seeds from it, grow some more, maybe get
Yeah.
some seeds in from Amsterdam or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So what was your first experience then when you really went into it with intention, where you were like, I want to make sure that I get really good flower out of this? And was that in an outdoor setting, or was it
Yeah.
in your first indoor setting? And then, kind of talk about the transition between
Yeah.
those two and what you did as a grower.
Okay. Until I went to study in Ljubljana I studied German language and literature and Germanistic. I'm a professor for German language, which I don't do now. But the thing is, when you go to study to university, you have, a time in your life that you will never have again, just during your studies. For me, it was very simple. I choose this and I went to live for 6 years for free, to be free, travel whenever I want. It was easy living, cheap living, a lot of friends. I made a lot of friends all around the world. It was really good time. So in this time, I realized that people grow, for example, in Ljubljana, there was this guy who grew indoor wheat, and I saw that in 2001. I never saw indoor wheat and heard about it, but never saw it because we grew so much outside. But
Sure.
even before that, it is like that. We were growers, because we come from rural areas. We live in very, there's a lot of forest and a lot of patches, and we were guerrilla, like you call it, guerrilla growing. This is what we were. Uh, and today it's like that still these kind of people exist and are still my friends. They provided clones also for my facility. Um, these people are still living this kind of way. And through this kind of people, I saw that thing what you asked me. When did you realize? I realized when we started to buy seeds from a specific cultivar. and then try to find between those seeds to try to find something that you would like to have again. Yeah. So those people already cloned. So cloning was on the end of the 90s, 98, I think I saw cloning, right?
Okay.
But we did it for outdoor first. We didn't flower indoors. But indoors under high pressure sodium lights, I saw it first time in 2001. I saw it.
What was your impression of that when you first
I
saw it?
was I was blown away. It was purple wheat what I saw.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, no, first thing that I saw under lights, it was really purple wheat. Really
Wow.
purple, yeah. It was wow. It was Shaman by Dutch Passion, the strain,
Okay.
which is actually an outdoor strain. And we used to grow it a lot of outdoor after that. But those guys already had the moms, and during the, in the wintertime when the demand is not there for those clones, they were flowering them indoors.
Sure.
Yeah, so they already made those selections, and I actually saw that they did it like, from few packs they popped, they have this numbering, and then few was the winners, which they were reproducing all the time. And you have, when you buy wheat from them, you have the same wheat for years, which is like you buy wheat and it's the same, and you buy wheat, it's the same, you buy another wheat, and half a year later, it's the same because they were doing the clones, and that's
Sure.
how we realized it's standardized. And the standardization of something that is very much good chosen, somebody that
Yeah.
choose really good at that times. It was like you could be the master of ceremony,
For sure.
people, the whole
So when
scene,
you
the whole concert scene. I was in music business, man. When
That's right.
the whole people, everybody knew about the strain because everybody was smoking it. It was like so prevalent, when the amnesia, the Shiva, super silver haze cut came, it was so obvious. It's like smelling like incense stick all around,
Hmm.
It's like, yeah,
So when you first encountered this realization of the standardization by using clones and reproducing in the same environment, and reproducing in an indoor environment rather than in an outdoor environment where if you get one crop per year, maybe you use a bunch of clones for it, but the quality of that product 1 month after harvest versus 10 months after harvest is going to be pretty different, and you probably know that as a consumer as well, just having the
yes,
different progressions of if it was an outdoor crop versus an indoor crop, where then in the indoor crop, you get 4 or 5 different harvests a year. So, you're maybe having stuff that's 3 months old at the most, 4 months old.
yeah,
And so you have a much higher level of like a standard of what you're expecting. So
and
when you experience this, where were you at in your growing career? Like, what were you doing at that time?
actually, the thing is, what I want to tell you is like a friend of mine was growing orange bud, which is Californian orange skunk, for a long time, like
Okay.
6 years in a row, through from seeds all the time, buying
Oh,
seeds and doing it. Yeah. So in the first 2 years, he had really good crops. And I mean, the wheat was the same almost, like really,
that
this
all
is all
from seed.
all from seeds. But then it changed. He bought the same packs. Somehow the wheat was not the same anymore. And it was not depending on the season of the weather. It was weather was the same, but the quality was lower. And he always relied on seeds, always the seed form of it, always, because it's stronger plants, it has a better root, it's true, it's stronger plants, it has better root system, it's more strong in sense of against it's predatory in the sense of no issues with how you call pests, yeah.
Sure.
uh, it's much more like that if you have a good line.
Right.
But if the line gets bad and you sell it as a producer, which is a big producer in Europe, actually today, very well known company, that you do that, and most of those companies are like that. If you're not a small breeder anymore, you don't have that anymore, because they all rely on white label production, which
Right.
means it change. You cannot have in your menu 150 strains and tell me that you are producing them in-house. That is absolutely impossible to
The
do.
the the HVAC system alone to be able to handle all those different pollen sources without there being any potential of cross pollination
No,
is a little bit ridiculous. You're
it is.
talking about like a multi-million-dollar facility alone just to be able to have the infrastructure in place to handle that. And sure, there might be like lab grade facilities in different parts of the world that are seed producers, that produce like row crops, right? Like wheat or corn or other things like that, where it needs a high level of standardization and safety protocols to make sure that there's no contamination. But no one's doing that with cannabis seeds. Like
No.
you wouldn't be able to find the backers for the infrastructure for something like that just due to the legality reasons,
Yeah.
because you're still
And
producing flour.
yeah, yeah. And you asked me when I did realize, I realized, when my crop got stolen in 2000, and my father called me. I was in Ljubljana, study, with my guys. I was in the radio. I was a radio journalist and I was
Okay.
working in radio. My dad called me like, hey, I remember the day I was crying, man. He told me, hey, your Durban poisons are gone. There were trees at home here. I have it in the garden. I was crying, man, on the phone. It's like my dad called me. It's like he was crying also.
Yeah,
That's how we were, like we were depending on this shit,
for
and
sure.
we have a crisis in, there were some heroin junkies in the town here, they needed it, more than us, so they were
Yeah,
stealing it, yeah. But all of these guys are already gone, because karma comes back and, you know, they're not alive anymore, these people. But I realized at that time that people come to my place to steal my ganja, so I have to move to another strategy to get the ganja done. So we moved indoors, and
okay.
me and my dad made an indoor room, and I flowered in this room from 2003 till 2019, until when I opened my facility in Austria, I stopped
Well, I
flowering.
mean, let's keep it as anonymous as we need to, or Uh, so I have a few questions though. So the first time you grew indoor, was this before or after you saw the high pressure sodium setup while you were in Ljubljana?
I grew before because we used to make the cloning. We go to the clones and we put them under artificial, CFL lights,
Sure.
to grow them a little bit. So that was my first experience with growing, but it was like just like maybe 1 2 years just to prepare the plant a little bit before you put them outside
Sure.
to not flower too soon in the season,
Right.
right? If I
Right.
get them in March, I can put them out in May, not in March, because it's too cold and the flowering time would be too short, so it would
Right.
flower. So we knew that, yeah, already, because we read the books, like some guy have this Connell Clark book.
Okay.
One other guy had Jorge Cervantes book. Some other guy had Ed Rosenthal book. You know,
Sure. So you just
this was
cross-referenced it, found out the
it was
information you
yeah. We
needed.
found out the
Yeah.
information because it was no internet. Yeah?
Sure.
So we
Well,
also had like these magazines. We have this Grow magazine, which we have also, but there was no internet. There was no phones, man. So it's like
right.
from season to season, we saw more than this when the magazines came and this internet and everything. We already knew that. You know what I mean? You already know that from experience because you see it all the time.
Sure.
And then you were like, okay, I'm so interested because other people have the same experience, like
Right.
Overgrow. I was
Sure.
watching
To like
Overgrow,
it.
man. It was like, yeah, man, that was my community was Overgrow, because at that time you have nobody to talk to. about it.
Sure. And then as soon as you see someone else write something down that you've already been experiencing, you're like, oh, it confirms it. Hell yeah, I was doing the right
Yes,
thing.
and has a
Yeah.
picture with it,
Right.
like
And they have like
it
a
was.
good explanation versus
Yes,
the anecdotal evidence. I feel like even with like the photoperiodism of the plants, right? Like you were saying, you can't just throw a clone outside in March. Even if you have a good climate, your lighting, depending on where you are in the world, you're gonna have probably close to 12-12 lighting, and you're going to initiate flowering, and then you're going to
yeah.
go into a revegetative stage of the plant, and then it's going to flower out again. And some people might say,
You
oh, that
I
works,
mean,
but
it works with some strains, right? But some
not
strains, I mean,
right.
it's not the method to rely on,
No.
Yeah.
No, we've even found growing outdoors that sometimes we won't start the outdoor plants until late July,
Yeah.
or mid
Yeah, I know what you
July,
mean. Yeah,
and
very very good idea.
you just
Yes.
throw the small clone out there, and it has 2-3 weeks of vegetative growth, and then boom, flips to flower, but also has like this robust amount of root growth at the same time. So you
Yeah.
get this kind of synergistic growth where the roots are vigorous, the upper growth is vigorous, and you get these huge plants from nothing.
Yes. And the pests have no time to be,
That's
also
another part to it. Yep.
less pests. Have you seen that? When you
Oh,
do this
yes.
late July crop, like you say, that you put outside vegetative state clones, which is
Sure.
really hardening, but then it's like much less problems,
Right. You
much
have
much
just
less.
less pressure overall, because if
Yeah,
pressure builds up on a day-by-day basis, and you
yeah,
can only do so much through spraying or applications of beneficial insects or otherwise, before it becomes either cost prohibitive or too late in flower where you don't want to affect the final product, then, if you're adding on a month or two, that's a lot more pressure to be built up. And one thing we've also found is sometimes your yields can almost be the same in certain cases, depending on how
yeah,
close you're planting. If you're doing like either a row of plants with some sort of drip irrigation or something, if you have them at a 5 foot center, like a 1.5 meter center between plants, then you have, if you give them those extra 2 months of growth, they're going to just grow into each other in the roots as well. They're going to sense that they have now limited space to grow, and their yields aren't going to be like, you know, if you have 3 weeks of veg versus 2 or 3 months worth of veg, you're not going to have 3 times the amount of yield for
no,
that extra veg time, and you're going to have all the extra pest problems like you're talking about. So that's something that, as a grower, I always thought, if you're growing big plants outdoors, you need a lot more veg time, and in some
oh yeah.
cases sure, but in other cases it's almost not
Actually,
advantageous.
it's very simple to make a giant plant. Actually, it's not difficult. It's like you put it all, you've sprout it in February, and then grew it inside as if you can, and then I saw that in March they already putting them in tunnels, and they are prolonging the light, of course, for
Right.
4 to 6 hours. You have like HPS lights that give a little bit of heat, and then in May they already have these big plants, which actually then outgrow everything there. But actually, man, you know how much waste it is to do that.
Yeah,
Like, this is only for the eye. To do something like that
it
is not
is.
economical. That is not
No.
economical. This
Well, and
was in the
even for
time when in America you had this plant count, right? Because
right,
of that it
you still
happened.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, if you look at it from like an agronomic standpoint as well, the nutrient assimilation from the grounds to create this huge plant, all this biomass, like the actual yield from that total biomass, the percentage or like the fraction of the total biomass is going to be a lot less than if you have smaller plants with really healthy, robust growth. The fraction of that total biomass that's going to be your end product is going to be way greater in a smaller plant.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It doesn't make sense, but it is impressive. We see these people like the Mendo Dope Boys or these different groups that are like, we're going to grow the world's biggest cannabis plant and flower it out, and it's like, all right, like that's
That's cool.
fun,
Actually, it's
but
cool because
it's
you
not
know
like a
no, that
production purpose.
it's not a production purpose.
No.
Definitely, but I mean, I appreciate everything. Some people do that, over the stone. Have you saw that, man? They grow something over
Oh, a
stones,
little like a bonsai.
like a
Yeah.
bonsai,
Yeah.
and
I've done that.
it's
It's
like
fun.
it's fun. I mean, that is some cool shit. I mean,
Yeah.
I like that.
But it's not like
But
monocropping
this,
in
no, it's
a
not.
setting to produce a bunch of flour.
No, no. You know what is very, very much important? What I wanted also to touch on a little bit. The quality of the water that you are using is, I think, this is something, when you say you need light, you need soil, and you need water. You don't even need soil, you need a medium. Yeah. What the
Hmm.
medium is, it can be rock wool. Yeah. It can
Right.
be, yeah. So, but the water quality to bind the nutrients in the
Hmm.
way, yeah, aerated water, living water,
Right.
drinkable water. It's like we have a lot of luck here in my country, where I live, especially. I mean, my place is like you drink the water, it's not so it's drinkable, but it's not that good as in the mountain region. Right? They have it from the tap, man.
Yeah.
It's drinkable water everywhere here. It's so good that it's drinkable from the tap. I don't
I,
buy bottled water ever here,
yeah.
ever. I
I
don't buy it
I have to
because
buy bottled water here. It's we're on this well, and the electrical conductivity of our tap water is 1.7. So,
oh my god, I
it's like
have
950 parts per million or so.
I have 0.4 from the
Yeah,
tap, man.
I
It's
always check
just
it. It just blows me away.
oh my god.
Yeah,
But
so we
you know
like
what I
only use
mean?
it for cooking or stuff.
Uh-huh. The thing is with water, and the people don't realize here how easy it is to grow. Actually, the water is drinkable water, so if I can drink it, the plants will drink. I always have to put a pH minus here, always, because of it's 7, so I go to 6.3, 6.2 for the peat-based plants. And when I do cloning on rock wool and on easy plug, which is peat-based, I for the peat-based I do 6.0, 6.1, and for the rock wool I do 5.7. When you actually you have to with rock wool you have to always do a pre-soak for 12 hours minimum, because the rock wool itself has a pH. So when you put it in water, it has to balance out this pH. So the water is I put in 5.0 when I from my tap. I have to put 5.0 the water to put in the rock wool. So next day when we come to work to do the cloning, it's 5.7, 5.6, 5.8, the rock wool. And you do this pre-soak and it's working fine. Uh, but I already also saw that, it's the medium only. Yeah. So the water is so much important, what I want to touch on. That the water quality will bind the nutrients, and you have a lot of more playroom to do with this water. If you have a water EC of 1 point something from the tap, you don't have a lot of room,
Right.
because you have to know what is in the water already.
Right.
So you don't add it, Because here is like I know that the cannabis likes a lot of iron,
Right.
and many people don't know. I mean, don't talk about it. They know, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
That iron is as much they always say Kalmak, Kalmak, Kalmak. You can add Kalmak, no problem, eh? But if lack of iron comes, then no Kalmak will help you, no NPK will help you, nothing will help you.
Right.
Because there is locks, she will lock down.
Right.
All of these trace elements are so much important to know about them, and to be careful what kind of medium you are working on, and to be kind of aware that with some cultivars you need to add them, with some maybe you don't need to, but it's depending a lot of this, because people always then think that some brands of fertilizers don't work. All of them work. It's very simple to do a fertilizer.
Yeah.
You make it from scratch. Actually, Jorge told us already how it's very easy to do a fertilizer, but to make a good fertilizer and to balance it right, that's another story. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so speaking of fertilizing and kind of the grow style in general. So when you and your dad first then started having to grow indoors because you were worried about losing your crop either to theft or I don't know if you had any other sort of crop failure just due to weather or otherwise before that, but indoor growing kind of does limit a lot of those issues or potential issues. And so what was your first setup like? It sounds like you used some of the CFL bulbs that you were already using to keep your veg plants alive that were going into the outdoor garden.
Yeah.
But when you first set up your indoor garden for flowering, what did that look like? What was your media? How did you decide how to keep your plants fertilized, whether that be through the medium as like a living soil? Did you just pull some soil in from one of the beds outside? Tell me about it.
Okay, I mixed my own soil first. I knew about the soil, but we did not buy soil at that time. We mixed our own, and that means I bought some peat-based stuff. In bag, everything must be sterilized, right? So we could not take some good compost from outside and bring it in. That's not possible, right? So my secret additive was warm compost, warm dribblings from red worms.
Okay.
Yeah, and they sold them here for like a 50-liter bags or 20-liter bags. And we mixed this inside, and we mixed the guano, the bird and the bud guano inside. And you have to understand that was 2003,
Sure.
2004, 2005. And we let it sit for 2 weeks before we planted. And we were not putting them in pots, we were putting them in beds.
So you had beds inside.
We have beds inside, man.
So what were these
You
beds
know,
built out of?
They were built from. It was plastic bed. It was like you can buy it. It was like this plastic container which you can hold on each side and you can carry it, right?
Okay.
We just drain whole. But it was like we put 2 or 3 plants in one bed.
Sure.
And we saw this technique with Soma, Soma Amsterdam, Soma
Sure.
seeds. He wrote articles for the German magazine, and he has this that he has don't use pots, use the beds, and so the plants connect with the roots. And we had clones already in the beginning. We never put seeds in indoor. In the beginning,
Sure.
we have this access to these people, my friends, who having these standardized clones, right? The super
This is
skunk,
the
the
friends
Shiva,
in Ljubljana.
yeah, the friends in Ljubljana, which is not actually from Ljubljana, but all of them are from all around Slovenia, but are in Ljubljana because they are students,
Sure.
and all of them are living from the mountains, from the seaside, from the all of
Right.
these are still my guys, still
Cool.
growers, still doing their shit, still really good people. I love them, my family,
Right.
So still it's like some growers, and I will not talk about them now. I will talk about, you ask me what was the light, man. At that time you could only get HPS. It was not or MH, yeah. Metal halide for the vegetative time, and HPS, yeah. And after they put out the Philips, put out the Osram. Osram put out a light that can be used for vegetative state and the flower stage at once. You don't need to change it anymore. Yeah? We use that one, the Osram now T4Y something, It
Sure.
was 400-watt lights, and then we changed to 600, and we use the old trafo, the magnetic one, the really heavy sheet, you cannot carry it. It's so heavy. we
Yeah.
use that one. So after that, when the first ballast came that are digital, we were so, yeah, it's so light, man. You can
Yeah.
carry two of them in your hands because otherwise, first of all, the ballast, man, was so heavy and it started to broom. After 2, 3 years, when you use it, it started to make this sound like,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like broom sound, like bzzz. And it is not good sign because it uses more electricity for less efficiency.
Yeah.
You see, it was always, and then when the light came to, we saw the ceramic metal halide, the ceramic CM. Did what we tried this? It was good for vegetation, but maybe not for flower. I mean, I never went into it so much that I could tell, but I saw it and I worked with it a little bit. And now I work with LED lights. It's so cost efficient to the HPS.
Right.
I still have HPS at home somewhere hidden. When I use it, maybe one, because it produced a really really good flower too.
Cool.
It had its own qualities, even if it's 40-year-old technology.
Right.
Yeah.
What were some of those first harvests like that you and your
Oh.
dad had?
Not so good the first one. I mean, but it was clones, so it was like we instantly knew something is wrong,
Oh, okay.
because we saw the product from my people, and we saw it from indoor and from outdoor, and we saw the same plant, like it how it behaves, and then we wanted to reproduce it like them, and it was like uh, the first round was a disaster, and you know what was the problem? Ventilation.
I was going to
We,
ask.
yeah, we did not put the strong. We then on the second round we have it was like a revelation.
Sure.
Even the second round was so much better. It was so much better than anything. And then we tried to keep this level for some time, and then you add a little bit more, and we would adjust the wing. The wings were better because before we had these small ones and
Sure.
pull tubes and fucking shit, some shit like that. At the end, from round to round, from strain to strain, uh, you get better.
Yeah.
And it was like we have 5 crops, indoor crops a year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, each year five. So 10 years, it's like 50 crops. Yeah. 15 years is like 75 crops, right? Like after 100 crops, you know your
You know
shit.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So like you when you first noticed that you needed more ventilation, did what were you seeing in some of that in that first crop where like did you realize that they were like heat stressed, or was it a humidity issue, or was it both?
It was like a condense was starting to put the walls were condensing. You know
Oh,
what
and
I mean?
dripping.
Dripping.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. It's like what the fuck, Because my dad was like, I said to him like ventilation, but he got some small 20 watt, thing like small ventilation, but that is nothing, I mean,
Yeah.
but you have to understand at that time you cannot get just into a grow shop. There was no grow shops here,
Right.
so you have to get this shit. Like even the carbon, you have no carbon filter the first 2 years because we
So
are
it was
living
the room like 90 degrees, 100% humidity.
the first, yeah. But then on the second, man, it was already like 50, 60% of humidity, and temperature wise was much better. We got a heater then, and
Okay.
then everything went much better.
Okay.
And the ventilation after because we were very focused on ventilation because one time in the first year, I think, we get powdery mildew.
Right.
And we didn't. First time I saw it. I mean, I saw it on wine grapes. I know what powdery mildew is, and you know how we cure it at that time
Hmm.
with milk. We have farmers here who have cows. So when you put 100% cow milk on processed milk, you dilute it 10 to 1, you spray your plants with it, and the powdery mildew is gone.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
But it's really stinky. It's so stinky, man. I don't want to repeat it ever in my life. Ever.
Oh no. So this you spread this on your indoor plants,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you just had like rancid milk smell after a
It
while.
was like, yeah, but the crop was really good at the end, man. Really good. Yeah. I mean, really
Oh
good.
man.
I mean, we have just a little bit of powdery mildew. We sold it. And after that, we really got into what was the reason. The reason was that we got the powdery mildew with a clone that we acquired from Graz, from
Right.
Austrian facility. It already had that. Because other strains, the powdery mildew plant, the New York City diesel plant, was like leaning on the Sensi Star plant, which had no powdery mildew. But the New York City diesel plant was like white. It was like somebody would put flour over it,
Oh,
like.
so this is the true story of how sour diesel was created then, right? You just took New York diesel and sprayed it with milk and let it go sour.
But this clone, New York City diesel at that time, it was produced by Soma,
Hmm.
but it has nothing to do with your sour diesel, or nothing to do with the chemlock, or nothing to
Right.
do with anything like that. It
It was just
just
like their
was,
version of what they were trying to get close to,
yeah, but I think someone just made up a name, for
for
that
sure.
specific cut. He made Soma is a great breeder for other stuff, I know, but for this cut, I mean, it was very specific wheat. I mean, it was so smelly that this shit when it grew, I mean, it had so this aroma was like, I don't know. I mean, people in Austria will know about that cut. It was in the
Hmm.
90s and in the early 2000s. New York City diesel cut. It was I was puking, like
Oh, it
for
was that
me.
strong.
Yeah, no, the aroma. The aroma
Oh,
was
okay.
like whether you like it, you don't like it. I never liked it. I just got one clone one time, and it had powdery mildew. It infested my crop. It was like not good relation with this plant with me in the beginning. This is
Sure.
something I don't like, right? But doesn't matter. I know that some people liked it because they produced it and it worked for them. But in my place, it was infested with PM. So I saw PM then, and I from that time I was really trying to fight against PM all the time. But it's all about the VPD, the vapor pressure deficit.
Yes.
Powdery mildew has no chance if you create an environment that is not possible to connect to the plant.
Absolutely. I like to explain to people that powdery mildew it's a mushroom basically,
It is a
right? It's
mushroom.
just
Yeah?
it's just like other fungal organisms where you need a wet dry cycle as well as like a hot cold cycle in order to sporulate the mildew spores. And so if you think about it like the forest floor, right? Where you would get edible mushrooms or something from if you were out foraging. You're going to have all this leaf litter on the top of the forest floor. So below that, where the mycelial colony is growing, it's going to be cooler. It's going to be wet, right? And then when it pushes up its fruiting body above the leaf litter on the floor, it's going to be a little drier and a little bit warmer. And so if you have cold, wet nights and dry, warm days, you're going to have this sporulation event in your grow area where you're going to allow for, because powdery mildew spores are everywhere, right? You're not going to be able to
Absolutely.
reduce powdery mildew
No.
spores unless you have
No.
a completely sterile environment with like HEPA filters and UV
Yeah.
filters and all these different things, right? So if you're creating the environment for it where it's like wet, cold, then hot, dry, then wet, cold, then hot, dry, you're going to have all these spores just loving life because they're the
And
mycelium can grow at night, and then it can produce its fruiting bodies in the day, which produce more spores, and then those sporulate at night, and then they produce more fruiting bodies in the day. So it's just
And
this.
Nick, you know why actually? Because there is this spora on the leaf. The when you look at the microscopic way of the leaf, it has this spora, and it
The
has
stomata.
stomata, and it has wax around the stomata. When you have this dry, hot instead of wet, cold, the wax is dry out and it's crumbling, and
Mm,
it makes the leaf susceptible for the spore to
for sure.
connect to the leaf.
Right.
It can enter the plant through this gate after
That's
that.
a great point.
Yeah,
Because you always notice when you have a really good, steady VPD, like, because you want a temperature differential day and night, but that means you also need to adjust your humidity day and night so that
yeah.
the overall vapor pressure deficit kind of remains uniform day to night without having too much fluctuation. You can have some, but not a lot. But when you have that limited fluctuation and all your parameters are set, you get that awesome waxy cuticle where the leaves are shiny almost,
Shiny,
right?
and
And
they
they
never
look
have powder.
healthy and happy.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes,
you can
yeah,
see it on like tomato plants too, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like a
yeah.
really nice healthy tomato plant is going to look waxy and shiny, and then if you allow for that tomato plant to maybe go too long or get unhealthy, then you start to get powdery mildew on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very very similar things where vapor pressure deficit is huge, and it sounds like you had a huge experience early on to see that
Yeah.
ventilation is one of your friends if you don't have like air control or air conditioning and air
No.
handling systems like that.
For example, you in my facility when I moved my first facility to the second one where I am, I always have this calculation in my head. I have to remove the air from the room 8 times an hour. I can be able to do that 8 times or 10 times an hour if I can remove the whole air space
Sure.
to change it. Then the VPD is okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? It never have problems.
Well, before we get into too much of what you're doing currently, I just want to wrap up a few questions about kind of some of these earlier experiences with indoor settings. So, did you run this living soil, that the substrate that you would create and put into these beds? Is that what you ran the entire time that you did your home growing, or did you ever move into hydroponics?
I never did hydroponics instead of cocoa. I tried cocoa.
Okay.
I liked it, but the stuff was at that time I had no. It's always the thing that you have to learn, and you learn by mistakes.
Sure.
Always, always you learn by mistakes. And because if you cannot question something that you did wrong, what is the problem? You always have to ask, what is the problem? Why is this thing? And it always is your fault. It you have to get rid of the ego thing that somebody give you a sick plant and that the plant was in the beginning when you got it, it was already okay, but now it's not good, so the genetics must be it. Wrong, wrong. You are the problem. You know what I mean? It's always the grower's fault, first of all. 99%, right? Let
Yeah.
me say like that. Yeah. So when you go through this concept, then by mistake, you make all the mistakes.
Right.
You don't, and then of course, when you cultivate clones instead of seeds, you always have the same plant. And with the same plant, you can masterize the process very
Right.
much quickly, very much better because this plant is always the same genetic material. Of course, it's depending on how the mother was cut and how was, yeah, the clone sometimes is better, sometimes is worse, but it is the same cut. So if you have a good environment, even from very, very bad clones, you still can make really good plants if you put all the dedication into it and take time and don't rush things. So actually, it is always been a lot of a lot of empiric work. That means grow, grow, grow all the time.
Right.
Indoor, outdoor. I was doing indoor, but in these times, man, we are doing outdoor too because
Sure.
to do indoor in the summer was never an option.
No, you'd need
It
like
is
all this sorts of air conditioning and
Yeah, and we
yeah,
don't have this air conditioning. We don't buy this shit. It's like, I mean, and all the crops that I got from this time, from these years, I tried many, many, many different genetics from Austrian clone market.
sure.
I mean, there was so much genetics that, you know,
When
trying
did the
to,
Austrian clone market open up? Like when was that
ooh, uh,
available?
around 2000. It's,
Whoa,
even before, yeah. It took
that's
25
cool.
years. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Sorry,
One
little
guy
sidetrack,
is,
but
yeah, yeah. But it's so long, actually the clone market is there.
yeah,
And my guys before that were working on it already, because they didn't get those clones from Austria, but they made them themselves. It's, uh, but in the sense of the Austrian clone market is so big now, and we don't want to get too much into it now. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's like I'm a part of it. Gartenswerk production by Herbetics is a part of it. We are quite a big wholesaler now, and people know us and genetics. We have to represent them, and this is the story how I got to those
right.
genetics actually. Because without all this work, when you ask me as a home grower to see all the other clones in the market, I could not even have the ability to think about the genetics. It is like for me when you say to me orange bud. Orange bud is the same shit as Californian orange skunk, tangerine dream, tangy, everything with orange punch. It is all based in the same family of plants, the parental genome,
Sure.
or purple urkel, the urkel. We have a clone which is ice cream runs. Actually, it's like purple urkel. It's the same. It's the same thing. A little bit variation of it, but it's the same thing as purple urkel. It grows the slowest plant to grow ever. Produces very dense purple buds, very spicy. No issue with mold. No issue with pests. Outside performer totally. That's how you know the plants because through the years of growing as a home grower, years and years, and trying different cultivars until you try to make your own crosses.
Right.
Of course, you end up there, yeah. You make your own crosses, but then it all ended for me when I have a family, man. I have two children, and I have to feed them. And the thing is that I needed a real job. I mean, I
Sure.
was working a lot of stuff in my life. We didn't talk about that, but I was involved in the music industry. I was involved into theater, but big theater. I was translator for a very big director who was working in German market. We were doing very big productions. So I
That's
was
awesome.
paid. I was paid very good there, so I could actually be a home grower, and coming from a production and living for 6 months without a problem.
Wow.
From that money, yeah, it's like that. But after, then it turned out, time tells. So now I started my own company in Austria, and after that I knew that I have to quit flowering, right?
Right.
This is the story that how I stopped flowering. I know it's like yeah, I started a legal business, so I had to
Well,
stop the flower.
let's talk about that. I mean, as someone who I think cloning is one of the it's such an essential stage of the cannabis life cycle if you're growing for production, and the different methods of cloning all seem, there's ones that work really well, but then there's some that might just be, like a home grower cloning a couple plants here and there, where they can be a little laissez-faire. They don't necessarily need to produce the nicest clones, but with some of the standards that you've mentioned before on previous shows, when dealing with the European market, where you have a, different regulators coming in and telling you how you have to do certain things, and certain precautions and standards that you have to have in order to ship clones over country borders, which is something that, I feel like a lot of American listeners will kind of be blown away by, that's just something that's part of your regular business model.
Yeah.
How did you develop your grow style, and what are some of the things that you do there that you what are some of the things that you do there that you feel are working really well for your cloning operation? And where do you feel as though there might even be some hindrances due to these different regulatory bodies that you're beholden to?
Okay. Good question, man. It is to transit from home growing to a facility is a very big thing. Many growers who are home growers now maybe think that their model of home grow could work in a big facility. Normally, it's not. The SOPs are so, you go out from home grow and you don't have no experience in industry. And actually, I did work for some other people in the industry here, but they have no SOPs. It was all, it was all anarchy, you know.
Yeah, I've
It
seen
was
that.
like, and I saw that, and I didn't want to work for them anymore.
No.
And I opened my own shit, and I created my own system, you know. And the system is like that you keep mother plants of specific strains, specific cultivars, that is actually personal connected. I am. That is, my opinion is very high quality one from the beginning already, because they were really selected for years already. They were not a clone from last year. What I got in my company from my people, they were like already clones that are like 8 to 10 years old at that time, and now they are like almost 15, 20 years old. It's like, and the thing is, I did not go to the Austrian market and get clones from other shops and open my own business with those clones.
Right.
Because normally people do that. It's
Sure.
like 90% of people did that at
You
that
curated
time.
your own library. Yeah,
I
it's
curated my own library, No, of course, I got a few strains which I got from a library that is in Austria also, but this is a friend of mine,
sure.
and it was classical strains which I needed for my customers at that time. Still I need, but now I have additions which I have, and the people that they have those strains, they got it from me, and I have no problem with it. When they sell it, it's not, of course, it's a free world, man. Do
Right.
what you want, It's like I'm not having no problem with that. If you resell the genetics that I got, of course, it
For
is
sure.
it is like that. Let's compete with quality of the clones. Then how
Yeah.
it's rooted. How the mother plant, how you shape it, how you produce it. The thing
Sure.
is that I tried in the facility that I was working before I opened my own facility with the business. Yeah, is they also used hydroponics, which I am not really professional in. I'm really more professional in sense of peat-based stuff and soil cocoa mixes and mother plants which are grown for like half a year or 7 months, and then I change them all the time. I don't grow old mother plants. I don't want to have my mother plants to be old and woody.
Right.
Woodiness is not a good thing with clothes.
So are you saying you still keep mothers around for 6 months, or you've lowered that
I,
time now?
I still have some strains you can keep for 6 months. Others you can't. I
Yeah.
mean, to have you can. Obviously, you can keep them for years.
Right.
Some shops did, like when I started my business. Some shops had mother plants for a year or more,
For
and they
sure.
were also bragging with it. Like Like we
It's
have this, you know, you
it's
can make
really funny.
didgeridoo, you can make
Yeah.
didgeridoo from the stem, man. Like wow, yeah.
You know,
But what about, you know?
it's really funny to think about it too, knowing what we do know now about how somoclonal variation and like pathogen buildup or other buildup of exogenous sources on the plant that are causing it to express differently than its unadulterated genetic version, let's say, and how those can build up over time in older plant tissue. And how I've even worked for some people at one point that they wanted to keep mothers around for as long as possible because the idea behind it was that that mother, the clones they get off of it, are going to be uniform to the product that they were used to growing. And that product changed over time because that one mother was around for like a year and a half, right? So the clones you were getting off of it at 30 days out from the transplant versus, you know, 360 days after the transplant, they're going to just be lacking almost in a little bit. And so they thought that they were doing it to keep the genetics at a specific level, whereas using healthy growth and recreating new moms successively and on a regular schedule keeps the plant in more health as long as you're choosing your
Yes.
healthiest clones from those batches and making sure that you're taking care of the mothers and the root system of the plant so that they maintain health. And so, as someone who does have to keep plants alive and to keep these genetics, in a sense, stable, where you have, very consistent results with the clones that you're shipping out. What are some of the practices that you're using to maintain those mothers at a very healthy, at very healthy growth, as well
Mhm.
as and then from there talk about some of your cloning practices that you feel as though create your best clones.
Okay. Mother plants, as I said, not to be too old, but not cut them too early for, you have to cut them for structure, for sure. But some of those clones are like you saw these big stems and you think it's gonna be some of them you can root very good, some of them you can't. Um, it depends on strains because when you keep like 35 different cultivars, it depends. It depends on strains. So,
Sure.
but the thing is, normally it is very simple. Do not overwater your moms. My first rule: do not overwater. It's very important.
Yep.
That's something that a machine doesn't know. A pump doesn't know when to stop pumping. You know, that's why I have two gardeners for the moms. Two guys that are paid for their jobs to do that, like every third day, and even before they have to go through because regular checking because we have different size of pots, but do not over water your mothers ever,
Right.
because if you do that, yeah, it's a very big, two steps back. Yeah. The second thing is do not keep your moms too old. The third thing is experiment with different mediums when you clone for different cultivars.
Okay.
We just realized that, for example, very old cutting from White Widow, old cutting, a new cutting from America, the ice cream runs, are rooting much better on rock wool instead of easy pluck.
Sure.
Easy pluck is a peat based, yeah,
Right.
but rock wool is rock wool. We have Grodan. The Grodan has its advantages, but you have to keep a lower pH for the Grodan than for the rock wool, than for the easy pluck.
Yeah.
The two different mediums, different strains react better on different mediums also. Maybe not many producers talk about it a lot, but when you have a variety of exotic strains like me have, like all the American strains, they work much better on Easy Pluck now than they do on Grodon, for me. I
Interesting.
use, yeah. And I use now I experiment now with different kind of rooting hormones.
Okay.
I use powdery rooting hormone, which is phosphorus actually, which is actually for I buy it here in Slovenia, and it's actually for all kind of cuttings, for soft, for half hard stems, and for woody stems. You can
Right.
root everything with this one. It's called Corex. Yeah,
Okay.
uh,
Clonex?
Corex.
Oh, Corex. Okay.
Corex, yeah.
Okay.
And the producer is in Slovenia. So,
Okay, cool.
yeah. And we use now one that is Clone 91. We got this product, Clone 91. It smells like ethanol, which is like
Oh,
strange.
interesting.
I used it first time last week to try it. Yeah. It is liquid. You
Right.
pour liquid and you can root, before you plug them, you have like a handful of clones and you put them in to soak for 20 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, we try this now. So I always tell people never be, because I work with different stuff a long time until, I try something else. And sometimes never be too stubborn on something that,
Right.
okay, something works, but don't be stubborn that only this is the it and over, because
Right.
that goes into a narrow point. Sometimes it's not available. You want to buy the material that your production goes on, and it's not there. It's like,
Right.
what should I do now?
Sure.
You have
It's
to have
why
a second pathway, to go, this works too. So all the time you have a solution, right?
yeah, and you have to I like to point out to people what some of these active ingredients are. Like in rooting solutions and stuff, you'll usually have it'll say IBA or endyl 3 butyric acid, or maybe NAA, which is naphthalene acetic acid. And you can find those different components in other products, and you
Yeah,
can look for the ratio at which they're put into your favorite product and either dilute to that ratio or find something with a similar ratio, or maybe just like you're saying, try something else. Don't be too stubborn to
yeah,
not want to try something else, because a lot of these different things, especially when it comes to horticultural practices like cloning, right? We've been cloning plants for over 100 years at production levels in around the world, and there's plenty of information out there on what to do for it, right? So being
Nick.
stubborn in one way
Yeah,
is yeah, you
we
can't
we
do
we
that.
also did experiment. I tell you this, in my facility. The guys did experiment without any rooting hormone at all, to plug it in the easy plugs. We did it, 50 of those. We did without hormone. 20 rooted without hormone. Just because the mom was so healthy also.
Right.
The plant
Well, there
itself, but with hormone, almost everything will root, right?
right.
So it's
Well, and even like the IBA and the NAA are just different auxins and cytokines, right? And those are already produced endogenously in cannabis plants for,
yeah,
apical growth, root growth, all these different things that we're like applying them to. That it's already there. We're just applying extra to try and promote something, and so yeah, it's important to know that there's different ways to get to it.
and as you asked me before, about the agencies come into your facility to get the paperwork done for you, that you have a European plant passport at the end
Right.
of the day. Yeah. And those agencies are actually there to have an insight and have a control over pests and diseases that can occur on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I have actually a very good relation to them, and I work with them closely for exports, which
Okay.
is outside, which is European exports. I don't need to extra to talk to them, but if I export outside of Europe, I have to organize a meeting, and they have to come to make, always is a different. If one country demands something that they need to step inside, they will always,
Sure.
It is, the paperwork is done like if somebody from outside of Europe wants clones from my facility, it's very simple. You give me an import permit. And with this import permit, I go to AGES, to this agency, and they come to my facility and go through this import permit. What is the demand on the import permit? From this demand, they will check all the facility, and even beyond of that. And if the demand is checking for all kind of viruses, it is there. I already did it, so it's a deep scan. People call, you have this 2 genomics stuff, right? Have this kind of data. It is all valid, but it is also very inaccurate also on the same point.
Sure.
It's not this thing, the standard for shipment outside of borders of continents, let me say, it's much more different standard.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be, right? We don't want to spread pathogens or invasive species or other things like that could potentially harm crops or other like native species of plants or other things like that.
Yeah.
That can be devastating. And so it's there's a part of like the level of bureaucracy behind that much oversight, I'm sure can be a hindrance in some people's eyes, but then the ability to also help prevent issues like catastrophic sort of events potentially from occurring.
Brother.
Like, could you imagine, like, let's just say something with hops latent viroid, right? If something like that entered into a market where there's like a CBD manufacturer and it somehow makes its way into that facility due to mislabeling or something from lax standards, it could ruin,
destroy.
Let's say it just ruins one crop, but this crop is over 100,000 acres or something. That's crazy amounts of wasted resources and wasted time and all these different things that could have, gone into a productive crop. So, yeah, I think it's really valid to have stuff like that, especially when you are shipping over country or continent borders, which is something that, again, I don't think that a lot of people in the US market are thinking about how much standardization and oversight will be required if something like that were to happen. It already happens if we're shipping other production crops that are through some sort of clonal tissue, like whether it be like apple or other orchard crops, things like this, oranges, all these things that are they're single cultivars, they're cloned onto existing rootstocks, or it's a whole market in and of itself that has extremely high levels of oversight, because if you ruin something like the orange market, it not just ruins the capitalistic sense of it, where you have nobody gaining money from their oranges anymore, but you also lose a lot of that potential nutrient source for however many millions of people that would provide it for. So it's important, but it requires so many different angles to look at.
Yeah, man. It is actually, these agency people who are officials, government officials, they're actually very helpful people. For my facility, for example, I always followed their advice. Their advice was, for example, I was shipping to Israel one time, a few years ago, and they told me that 2 years ago, one Austrian farmer tried to ship apples into Israel.
And just apples themselves, right?
Apples, apples, man. And all the apples, when they arrived in Tel Aviv, were destroyed.
Because they didn't pass this standard.
Because they didn't pass the standard. And what was the problem? He told me. Because it was like when I contact them, because I have from Israel the inquiry, and they give me the import permit. So on the import permit, there was listing of stuff that I have to check for before I send it. Man, that was like a list. That was like a list. When we talk about hope latent virus, there was not only hope latent virus. There was stuff written there. I still have this paper. It is stuff written there. All viruses. I know, like tobacco virus, latent something virus, then mosaic virus from some different mosaic virus again.
Sure.
Some
Got like beet curly top virus.
I don't know, man. It's like every fucking thing that is possible to check for. They wanted to have it checked. And we did that then, and actually he told me that the thing is why the apples were destroyed from this farmer, because he was using some stuff for prevention, some,
like a
some
pesticide
spray,
or something.
like a pesticide or something that was allowed in Austria but not allowed in Israel.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
And
like.
the thing is that he used that, they give you this checklist what you are allowed to use and what you are not allowed to. Everything you get, everything.
Sure.
These are really documents, man. This is like you have to go through and you have to check what is actually on your market, because most of that stuff on the list is not there on your market.
Sure.
But you have to find stuff that is there on your market in your country to check for it, because Israel is a different environment, man. It's like they have different stuff.
It makes me think of in the U.S., every state that has a legal, like a recreational or a medical market for cannabis, has different standards for testing. Some of them will test for pesticides. Some of them won't. Some of them will test for mycotoxins, like from a mold or something like that could have been produced on the flower. Some of them don't.
Yeah.
Some of them test for THC percentage using one protocol. Some of them use another protocol. All these different things where it's not standardized at all, but some people are still wanting to use the standardizations we have in place and then open up interstate commerce or international commerce. And how can you do that when the product from your market is just going to go to this other market? If it gets tested, it's going to fail and it's going to get either trashed or returned, but still all that shipping cost is going to then fall on the initial producer.
It will not get returned. No way.
Oh, no, it's going to get destroyed.
It's going to get destroyed. It's going to get destroyed onto the black market, destroyed.
Oh, right. It's going to get destroyed. Yeah, absolutely.
Destroyed.
So it's not something where I feel like we're mature enough within the market to be able to even start to think about that stuff until we start creating a little bit more standardization and less of this sort of fog that is the cannabis market, where you can't necessarily know how it's going to even be tested within your own state's market. You have different standards of testing for each facility within a specific state, so you can't even like one company might test your product and come out at 20% THC. Another company might test your product and it'll come out at 35 THC, and the only difference is that they pulled it from the top of the bag versus the bottom of the bag.
Yes.
It's stuff like that where it's like how can we use that level of discrepancy within our standards and say, well, we can apply this to a larger market. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And you're making a very valid point that, within a market like you're operating in, where you have to have all these standards, something as simple as using one pesticide that's totally fine within your market, it causes the entire shipment to get destroyed. All that money gone, all that production gone, all that time and effort gone, right? All because you didn't read somebody else's standards.
Two papers, right? What is allowed in your country, what is allowed in this country where you try to export. You have to have two papers, and then you have to measure. You like what, and then you find this cross, like, oh fuck, we're using this and they're not allowing it. Oh fuck,
Yeah.
This is the shit,
Yeah, That's a lot to deal with.
The thing is that I always, I'm a lucky one that I really don't use a lot of pesticide in my facility. I try. My thing is, of course, I use some, but it's really soft one. Plant wash also. But the most important thing, clean your fucking floors.
Yep.
Walk in with the shoes that you are walking into your facility. Have a changing. You change your clothes, change your shoes.
Do you use like a
Always,
do you use a foot
always.
bath or anything like a shoe bath?
We have a mat which is like you step on it and it's
Right.
like disinfecting stuff, right?
Right.
But most of it, this will not prevent
No.
anything if you don't use extra. Your shoes in the company is your shoes.
Yep.
You don't walk with those shoes anywhere else. And when the floors of the facility has to be so clean that I can lick it, boy. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
that is the thing that is most. I think that you can maintain the most pest-free environment through this first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because when
So,
the clean floor is there, then there is no more room for these things to be really impacted. Like
right. They don't have hiding places.
no.
You can so we already talked a little bit about your mother practices and your cloning practices. So, what are some of the other parts of your facility that are either unique to your setup or that you really feel as though you have dialed in? Because I think you're in a mixed light setting, correct? It's a greenhouse with supplemental lighting.
Actually, it's not a greenhouse, but
Oh,
it's made from panels. It's like industrial complex. But
okay.
from one side of this industrial complex, it's glass. It's a
Oh,
glass. It's a glass wall.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, so just the wall is glass, not the ceiling?
No, not the ceiling. No, just the
Oh,
wall. The ceiling is not glass. The ceiling is sunlight. It's the light is Austrian producer that I have for LED lights, and this producer developed these lights that I have. This line, the Evo line, for 6 years development on cannabis.
okay.
These LED lights are specifically made for cannabis.
What's the company again?
Sunlight.
Sunlight. Okay,
Yeah,
I've heard of
but
them.
not
Yeah.
with UN, sun, but SAN, sunlight. It's
Oh,
Austrian
okay.
company. They
Yeah.
will start to sell in European, in the American market now. They just
Oh,
announced
cool.
they're really, really good. They are really expensive also, but also very quality. I mean, this is the top shelf lamp.
Are
Also
they
for
are they high bay lights where you're keeping them still 6, 7, 8 feet above the plants, or are they the bar style arrays where you're dropping them right down, 18 to 20
you
inches above the
you
canopy?
can do both with those lights.
Okay,
Actually, when you do the vegetation like I do, I always keep them very high. I
sure.
don't I don't go. But when you do flowering with these lamps, because they are full spectrum lamps, you go close. You can go close. And these
Cool.
facilities in Switzerland and all. I mean, this facility, really big facilities. They are providing facilities with these lights for years now, and they are really like you will see now. Actually, they will come to your market now. So, and they are actually like Steve Jobs. One guy made it.
Oh,
Martin is his name. Yeah, he's a guy that made. He was a grower, and that guy produced his own LED lamps, but because he was not satisfied with the LED lamps that was on the market at the time, and
for
he
sure.
was in a garage. And from that garage, a million company uh, came to light now. And they are really good producers, and we have a good relation. I was supporting them in a time when they were not so known actually, and I bought all the B stock
Oh,
from those
okay.
lamps. Yeah,
Yeah.
they had. I bought these lamps, which is perfect. The same lamps that they sell now at Evoline. But thing is that the glass, because the protection is E65, that means you can spray in this environment with these lamps. Yeah, they are waterproof LED lamps, and you can
Hmm.
spray sulfur also. They have
Cool.
like coating
Right.
because LED lamps you can destroy with sulfur. So
Right.
yeah, maybe people don't know that and they spray and then they are wondering why the lamps are going off at a certain point. Yeah, because sulfur will eat your diodes.
Yeah.
It's like that. So actually, with these lamps, I produced most quality moms because HPS was good also before that, but in a certain time, in winter time when you don't need so much heating then. But now it
Yeah.
is like the electricity went so high and you need sufficient light. You need a setting when the light, the density of the light is so that you can see it on the internodal spacing of the moms. You can
Right.
see it on the stem. How you can see it, but the thing is, they need more feed. You need to feed them more calcium, magnesium, iron, sulfur, zinc, mangan, boron, molybdenum. Trace elements and all those
Right.
stuff because they will eat up more because to use all of these photons that come
Right.
down right now. LED light,
'Cause it-
some people will tell that it's not so good for them. I understand it. Why? Because they were used to grow 30 years under HPS and
right.
metal halide, and the product was really good. And now with LED lights, the product is not there for
Right.
them.
Because they went from one facility where they had HPS and they're like, okay, I have all this air conditioning, right? And I don't have a lot of dehumidification. I won't need that. And then they go to LEDs and it's the inverse, right? You
It
have
is inverse.
less heat
Yes,
production, so
less
you
heat.
don't need as much HVAC in terms of the cooling, but you need a lot more dehumidification because your transpiration under LEDs is just way higher because your photosynthetic potential from that LED it's just more ideal light than HPS for cannabis growth. So I've seen other people run into that problem where they go from one to the other and they say, "Oh, LEDs don't work that well," and it's like just keep your temperatures a little higher, keep
Yes.
your humidity a
Yeah.
little higher,
You
but
have
make
to.
sure that it's
Yeah.
not getting out of whack. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Always
So
like this.
when
There is
when you
always a balance of things, the metastars of your body, is the same with
right,
those things, right? Yeah.
yeah, like the metabolic rate. Yeah.
Yeah, the metabolic rate, yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just goes up when you have more energy input. So,
For example, when I caught a mom that is been re-vegging for the last 3 weeks, I was not cutting her for 3 weeks, and she's like putting out these really branches, like wow. And then I caught her. The next time, I I'm not gonna feed her a lot. I caught her. I when she's dry, I give her a normal pedigree, and then the next time when I water her, then she gets a lot of food. But I need to
cool.
cut out the basic of her from beneath to up, just to leave the few nodias that I want to
Right.
shoot.
Right.
That one. So that is how I create good stems with clones. That you don't have a lot of when you have too much density. All these small branches
They
underneath, they
don't do
will eat
anything.
away the energy for the
Yep.
clones that you want to cut from your moms. Yeah.
What are you typically feeding like what strength of electrical conductivity for your normal moms? What are you feeding your clones? You said you cut
Yeah.
it back a little bit after you cut
Yeah.
moms. What are some of those different parameters you run?
Yeah. The water from the tap is 0.4, 0.5, right? With my place. Normally I have a regime of for the clones in the chamber. For the first 10 days I don't feed them at
Okay.
all. From the time they are cut, I don't feed them. And from the 10th day on, I give them 0.3 AC. So
So it'll
zero
be
point
zero point
0.5,
0.7,
0.7, 0.8 when you
some
measure
okay.
it. Yeah. And I use a very specific, BioNova company. BioNova.
Yeah, I think I've heard
It
of
is
that
a
before.
green one, and they have Hydro Super Mix. It's
Okay.
a specific product which is working really good. It's
Is it just
made
like a
for
one part vegetative
it is one
application?
part vegetative application, and you use it like it's NPK, and you use it as that, and you just it's like made for hydroponic systems,
Sure.
just like it's a mineral stuff.
Do you
It's
do you find that you have to add any additional calcium or micronutrients or anything like
I
that
I
with it?
add also from Kana, the risotonic. Risotonic is always it's a root booster, or
What's
from
that what's in the root
right
booster again?
rhizotonic it's called, and it's the tree that is made that is growing next to rivers. It's if you cut a branch from that tree and you stick it into the ground,
Oh,
it
like
will root.
a willow tree.
Okay, willow tree, yes, willow
Yeah.
tree. And the willow tree is the base of that product.
Oh,
That that is what the guy told me from Kama. He said actually the concept of the rhizotonic of the product of a root enhancer.
sure.
It is actually from willow trees.
Right.
And they got
Yeah, that's like
it stinks like it stinks like you know it does not smell very good when you
for
open
sure.
the bottle, yeah. But
Well,
it's
willow was
working
where
really good.
people yeah, willow was where people found what was it, aspirin, I believe initially was like willow shoots. You found like the same component for aspirin, and then I think it also even has a significant amount of IBA, the indole 3 butyric acid in it, and
Yeah.
so people could use that for giving to their plants to help promote health. And one thing that I found out recently that I know a lot of people don't know, but you can use aspirin if your plants have like a viroid, like hops latent viroid or something like that. If you add aspirin, like just your regular aspirin, to your nutrient solution, and I don't know the exact amount, so look it up, people, but it'll promote a healthy plant and reduce some of those viral symptoms, which is like if you need to limp along to a harvest, or if you need to keep something alive just long enough to make sure you can get healthy cuttings off of it and then either put it through tissue culture or something if it is a viral pressure, you can use things like aspirin to do that. And with a willow extract, you're getting both, right? You're getting
Yeah.
the promotion of this auxin for heavy root development, as well as this potential pathogen suppression, overall health tonic, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. So that's really fascinating. I could see how that, especially for moms, if you're feeding that, you're maybe raising the overall auxin count in the plant so that your cuttings root fast,
Yeah.
and vigorously.
They have to be hungry.
Yeah,
Not hungry that they start to yellow on the leaf because they will start to get the nitrogen from the leaves. They will suck it. Because sometimes when you root it on rock wool, it happens much earlier.
right.
Because there is no, it's neutral medium. It has no food inside. The speed-based stuff, the easy plugs, they have a little bit of nitrogen
Sure.
inside, and so, but this stuff doesn't. So, if you don't use the hydro supermix stuff, some kind of NPK, you get faster yellowing, but the root is still there.
Sure.
So, as soon as you put it into a medium which has some nutrients, it will work, right? Yeah.
Yep.
But the thing with the mom that you asked me before, where do I go with the EC?
Hmm.
It's very interesting. For years, I have in a regimen, a regime that would be between 1.0 to 1.3 EC for the vegetative moms. Sometimes now where I go until 2.2 or 2.5,
Wow.
but I do it once every 14 days only.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but
We
you have to know what I put inside to get this 2.5.
Sure.
Not nitrogen and not phosphorus. It is all uh, iron, calcium, magnesium, and all the trace elements, which is zinc, boron, mangan, molybdenum. It is, it all the trace elements with the elements. Yeah, macro
Hmm.
elements is NPK. This is
Right.
the macro elements. The micro elements is calcium, magnesium, iron, uh, yeah, and then you have this zinc and also all the trace. But the
Sure.
trace is so important for the mom health that normally you have to give her a decent amount of those stuff every 14 days when she's getting older, because if you don't do that, she cannot eat anything else. She cannot, if she doesn't have this, she cannot eat the phosphorus and nitrogen and kalium and nothing.
Right.
She will lock, you will lock it down. You
So
will add the nitrogen, but she will not eat it. You know?
so you found that with your mom's, the limiting factors are usually the micro elements rather than the macro elements. You feel as though
Yes, yes,
you can provide a
absolutely.
steady amount of macro elements to them, but by increasing the micro elements, you sustain healthy growth over a longer period of time.
Yeah, because
Okay.
you keep up the you keep you unlock uh, because if you don't have the micro elements, the macro elements are not available to the plant.
Sure. Yeah, it's just
It's
limiting the
a
whole
it's a
like Rubisco
yeah,
cycle and
yeah, it's a
absolutely.
chain. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's super fascinating because we we've just kind of slowly increased the EC of our mother feed over time because we've just found that in because we're under LEDs for all of our plants indoors, and once we reached a certain level, the limiting factor seemed to always be the nutrient load because we had like high PPFD, really nice vapor pressure deficit, airflow was great, high CO2 levels when needed. And so we're like, well, they just need more food. And we've now gone all the way up to, I think it's like 3.8 to 4.0
Yeah.
EC on our mother feed, and they're just
When
healthy as
when
can
it's
be.
flowering, right? Yeah, yeah.
No, just on the mothers for in veg.
Ooh,
Yeah,
wow, very
we
good.
just because we just get these super thick, pithy stems now where there's no hollow stems, and I know that's
Mm-hmm.
a whole debate within the cannabis scene as well as hollow stems versus
Hollow stem
non-hollow
is
stems.
problem to root, definitely. Yeah.
Hollow stems are a problem in general because it just means that you're missing something in the overall plant food. There's no benefit to the plant to having a hollow stem. People will be
No,
like, "Oh, it's a nutrient straw. They're
no,
just
it's
soaking
also
water up." That's not where the
we
water goes.
no, Nick. We call also it's like a hemp trade. We call it
Right,
the hemp trade. Hemp plants make that.
right,
Yeah,
because that's where the
which is cannabis, but hemp we don't like to have it hemp way, you know.
no, well, because
Yeah,
like the phloem and xylem, right? Those are going to be contained within the outer part of the stalk of the plant, whereas the inner pith is just kind of like the bones, if you think about it, right?
yeah,
It's just building structure so that the plant can hold itself up. So if you want healthy plants in flower or in veg, you want a lot of pith in it. But if you're growing for fiber alone, then yeah, you don't want pith. You want it to put all that energy into fast vertical upward growth, all in the xylem and phloem. So yeah, I've heard that before, that it is a hemp trait, and that if we're
it
looking
is.
for drug cannabis, then hemp traits aren't necessarily what you want to be promoting.
And one secret, Wolf, one secret is if you pick males, and Gabby would disagree now, but it's my version. If you pick males, never pick the first flowering ones because they carry a hemp trait. You
Interesting.
know, yes, don't. It will not. People say like, yeah, the faster flowering males will be the faster flowering females. It's not right. It's not. It has nothing to do with that.
That's so
It will
funny.
not. It will not relate. You can have a late flowering male, which will be much more drug trait. But
That's fascinating. I've never heard
to
that
choose,
as a drug
yeah,
versus hemp trait. I've heard it as
to
a
pick males.
potential for intersex trait, where if you choose males that flower too early, it means that
It
they
is
really want
intersex.
to show that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, but Nick, the intersex traits are actually hemp traits also because
sure.
intersex traits are wanted in the hemp industry.
Right. You just need to produce a homogeneous crop. So if there's intersex
Yeah,
traits, that means
yeah,
that it's no longer dioecious, right? It's almost more
yeah,
monoecious at that point. So it's going to be
yeah.
very
For
stable
seed
in the
production, you know, you
yeah.
have it all in one plant. You have the male and female parts on one plant. You have it seeded already. you can drive through the machine through it, and you harvest it, and you have seeds. That's it. That's industry. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but we are not industry. We are craft. So this
Exactly.
crafting is let's. I can just tell people that if they looking for males from one line, try to find the middle to late ones. Those are the ones. Those are the
For
ones.
sure. Yeah, it's very fascinating because whenever I've looked for males, I've always looked for the first flowers because I like to have the flower initiation happen early, especially if I'm gonna grow outdoors in northern latitude. I want to make sure that I have a fast initiation of flower so that I have a faster finish potentially. As long as I'm still shooting for those traditional indica or like Himalayan Afghanistan varietals that are going to have a shorter flowering time. So that's really fascinating. I think it's really interesting how everyone has their unique approach to what males they look for.
I will not tell that I'm right. This is not. But this is my theory. Only
Right.
I'm in love with cannabis like you are also, and so sometimes it's like people have too much of seriousness inside of like, no, you're not right, and he hates you now, and well, man, I don't hate nobody. It's like it's up to the person
For
how
sure.
you approach a thing and what is your own experience with it.
Right.
Why I would lie now here to you. It's like
Absolutely.
I don't care about, how much anybody hates me now because I said something that he's not agreeing with. But I like to have kind of people also to be invited into the show to have a different opinion than me.
Oh,
That
of
would be
course.
great. I
I
like to
don't want
hear a
us to all
different
have
opinion.
this. If we all had the same opinion, it would be an echo chamber. We don't need
Yeah.
that.
We don't
And
need the yes man. Always
no.
you say something and I say yes, yes.
Right, right.
There would
And
be no conversation.
and honestly, like I don't even look at flowering times as my first indicator of a male when I'm looking for it. I'm looking at structure. I want healthy side branches, big vigorous, giant leaves, healthy green growth, all on my uniform feeding schedule. I'm not going to change something for one male or another. I'm going to be like, which one does the best at this standard. Um,
And
it is really
sometimes,
unique.
bro, sometimes it's this team up. I choose
Oh
between,
yeah,
I had to choose sometimes between two. I pinned it down already to two males. And then I had to choose one of those males.
yeah.
How? The last thing that I did, because
Sniff it.
everything what you said now was there with
Right.
those two males. But then how? It's like rub it, smell it, smell it,
Yep.
and it's like this one or this one, this one or this one. Yeah, it's gonna be this one,
Yep.
and that's it.
And then it's funny because the next year you might have had a different choice because your palate's going to
Maybe
change.
next day would have a different choice. Because maybe we're not smelling that right that day. That's like. But someday, do you think that people that are high class breeders today, that all of these people are able to just find males like that? No, it's
No,
like
I don't think
no,
so.
no, it's like it is like nobody can really tell. I would just say like that. Nobody
For
can
sure.
really tell, and people should try it out. Why not?
Yeah,
And even
absolutely.
now that I said the earlier one that they don't should be used, use it now. So you will see, and you can
Right.
go and fuck me up. Like they say, Sasha, you were so wrong when you told this. Look, I got this elite clone now from that male that was too early.
Look how nice this plant is. Yeah, that's funny. I
But
mean, it
that,
is something
yeah,
where
no,
people have to have their own experience to make their opinion on something like that. And, you have your experience. That's why you have your opinion. I have my experience. That's why I have my opinion. But it's not like either one of them is correct or wrong or, it's just our own opinions, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Well, so, since you've grown for, I don't know, more than 20 years, right? You've done outdoor crops, indoor crops, pivoted into a clone company from where you were making, your own flour for your own consumption. So you've seen a lot of the different aspects of the industry, especially working with these European standard committees that require you to have one set of standards for one country that you're shipping to, another set of standards for another country that you're shipping to. So you have to tie all those together and make your own set of standards to make sure that you're compliant. You have a lot of experience witnessing these different sides of the industry, and we didn't even get into it on this podcast, but from previous episodes that we've had you on, we know that you travel to events like Spannabis or the German cannabis exposition, all these
Yeah.
different all these different things that you've seen, that you've had experience with, makes you, I feel like I always say this, but it makes you a great person to ask this question. Where do you want to see the cannabis industry go over the next 5 to 10 years? And let's make it more specific about your area, not necessarily on a global stage, but like within your market, what would you like to see change, or where would you like to see it go?
I would definitely like to see it being decriminalized, you know. In Austria, where I have this business, is still illegal. In my country where I live, it's absolutely illegal everything. Even clones are not allowed to do. You can only grow hemp, yeah. But the thing is, the industry as itself, my problem with it is that the big players will take over. Like there will be no this kind of. My wish would be to have a craft flower dispensary. One day. Behind what I do as a business of my library, that all of this library would be available to people that come to my place. Like all
Sure.
of these clones are also in flower form here, with good wine and good beer and something to eat.
Right.
And like a touristic stuff, like spa thing, like enjoy your life thing, yeah. But industry as itself, I would like to see it to be decriminalized in the sense that, so to be able to grow your own weed at home for your personal use, and then the industry that would allow people from all kind of areas to join it, which will not be possible. Actually, I know this is all like fairy tales what I tell now, but the corporations are taking over.
Yeah.
It's like here, like even more than US market. It here is even more specific. They don't even want the people to get access. Like they want straight to the hardcore
Right.
pharmaceutical weed, and there is no social clubs, there is no coffee shops, there is no home growing, there is no, you can just buy it, for big money, you know.
Yep.
But actually, it's so problem that people grow it already so much, and it's so embedded into the culture already that is actually then it's even more. The citizen will even more protest, and even more he will be self-sufficient. You know, he will even more try to get his own good stuff. So
Right.
because home growers will always produce better weed than the industry. Remember that. That is with tomatoes, the same thing.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tomatoes from your own garden will always taste better than the one from the supermarket. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is the same analogy actually. It is very simple. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I
the
agree.
industry will, the industry besides US, it will, if it start to legalize here, then after few years, like Kevin Jodrey already told, and I agree with him, the US market will come here.
Absolutely.
We stand no chance here against your market. We have no chance, but we can have little islands of craft
Right.
productions that will be maintained. I can tell you
Absolutely.
this. Until I leave, I will maintain this, but this will be something interesting, yeah. But it's not for the masses. Like good music was not for the masses in the
Sure.
beginning, right?
Yeah.
But then the people realize the truth, and then again we come back to, it's history repeats itself again. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I feel like there's just too much stigma still, and we need to be able to break that down a little bit. Podcasts like this help because we provide a more more insight to just each of our lives, how we go about, promoting this plant, caring for this plant, producing this plant. And, I feel
Every
like,
day,
right.
every day, brother. Yeah.
And there is so many people that still look at it as this criminal activity, but normalizing the conversation like this is very important, because we allow for people to see that these are just two people out there growing, clones for you, flower for me, all the, like, we're just doing it, right? It's nothing, it's not that big of a deal. It's just like any other crop, and we're trying to make sure that what we're making is not, I don't know if we want to say it's the best, but it's the best version that we want to put out there, right? And so I do feel as though, a little bit more, or a little, yeah, more decriminalization, not necessarily legalization with standards and
Yes,
rules and laws.
let's be realistic, because
Yeah, it's a
normally when
tomato,
people
it's
say,
a plant.
let's, it's like legalize it. Yeah, I always lived like this, But now, man, after so many years of listening to legalize it, it's like, hey, first of all, let's decriminalize it. Let's
Yeah.
put a foot in the door first, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not
it shouldn't be a
not
question
being.
of legality
Yeah,
and illegality. It's a plant. We should just be
it's
able to grow it. If
absolutely.
if that's if the need is to make some sort of dichotomous key of legality versus illegality, then we're already kind of fighting a losing battle. At least that's how I feel about it.
Me too, man. It's like I've been born into illegal market already, and then it was always illegal.
Right.
So, amen. For my grandfathers, maybe it was not, but that was in the beginning of the century.
Right.
Before it was illegal. 90. That footage of Henry Ford banging a hammer on a Ford car. Have you
Made of
saw
hemp.
that? See,
Yeah.
made of hemp, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was before it was illegal.
Right.
Because right after that, because he wanted to make cars built from hemp material, fueled by hemp fuel,
Right.
he was crazy guy. And actually, the whole system, DuPont came, which
Right.
made nylon, right? Nylon patent. And DuPont sent Henry J. Anslinger to be the head of the DEA,
Right.
what we know today as the Drug Enforcement Agency.
Right.
And Henry J. Anslinger is the guy and his people that actually turned cannabis into this kind of stuff that we know today.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
very simple. But behind him is DuPont. And DuPont is the corporation that owns the patent on nylon, which is plastic.
Right. And they didn't
Yeah.
want to have hemp plastics that
No,
could
at that moment we
outproduce
lost the
and
war. We lost the war because nylon was created and destroyed our planet. Our oceans are polluted with it instead of hemp plastics, which
right.
would be the second option. And
I mean,
we fucked
yeah.
up.
It is interesting to look back at history and see these inflection
You know,
points where something changed and you're like, it could have been different.
Jack Herrer was the guy that came up with the video. You saw that, Hemp for Victory.
Yeah.
It is a video that he actually get from some archives, and he released it as that the Americans see that in 1943, the government of USA legalized hemp again, like they really legalized wheat just to make materials for the army, again
Wow.
for the wars,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Hemp for Victory. That is Jack Herrer.
I have to look back into
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
man, Hemp for Victory. You will see it was illegal. Wheat was illegal for 1925 or something like that, right? 1926, and then it was legal between 1943 and 1945. Yeah, for production
Sure.
of fiber for
Right.
the navy and for and it was that and Jack found that video First, they don't want to give him. That would be a story, man. Maybe somebody in the community knows about this story, but I know as a Slovenian guy that I know that this video, this footage was found by Jack, and he released it. And first, they didn't want to give it to him,
Sure.
and then he released it. That he actually showed how corrupt the government, actually how hypocritic it is to actually allow something in a certain time and then forbid it again.
Right.
Like they make it illegal, then make it legal again, then make it illegal again, and now make it legal again.
Right.
That's how it is.
Absolutely. It's a giant hypocrisy. It's very
It is.
frustrating at
It
times.
is. You know it when you smoke your first joint, you know that it's all lie.
Yep, exactly. I've seen those experiences happen real time. Well, with all of your experience, one of the questions I do like to ask is, what would be some advice that you would give to new growers? If there was something like one little piece of advice that you think is up there amongst the highest of value advice that could be given to a new grower.
To a new grower now in this time, I would
Yeah.
that my advice would be Google shit. Google, because at our time we don't have Google, we don't have the internet, we don't have no source of information. We had to make all the mistakes. You don't need to make all the mistakes,
Right.
but be patient and try to be focused on information. Not try. It's not the way that everything should be thrown at you, and then you have to absorb information. Like what of course, plant seeds, yeah, and then of course try it, yeah, and also not only cannabis. Try to grow your own food.
Yep.
That would be my advice. Also, it's all the same thing. Yeah.
Just get into the garden, start doing it.
Get into the garden start. Also, if you're living in big cities, no problem. Have a balcony. If you don't have
Yeah.
a balcony, you have a on the south side of the. If you have a south side window, you can plant anything.
Sure.
Just do it. It's so beneficial for you. It's for the mind.
One thing
we are built for that.
I know that one thing people don't think about, especially when it's just like those within the cannabis community, is you can take your extra grow tent set up and grow some tomatoes or some cucumbers or something else in there.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how well it's going to grow.
Oh yeah.
It's going to, cannabis is such a heavy feeder that when you do something, a little easier, like a cucumber, like a lemon cucumber or something that just grows very vigorously and prolifically, you're going to not know what to do with all of that, all those cucumbers, all those tomatoes or peppers.
Yeah. Definitely.
And it can be like a whole nother outlet for the hobby if it is like a home growing hobby that you're developing. And so yeah, just start growing something. It's not that hard, and it's really rewarding.
It is for the mental thing.
Yep.
We need this as people. We are connected to this stuff so long.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I wish everybody that we don't live in very easy times. It's a lot of things are going on in the world, and we will not get into it now. Me and Nick, and it's like we all should be aware that your neighbor is your brother. Don't treat him as somebody, because maybe it will be a situation that you will need your neighbor.
Right.
Don't be like stubborn and look just like that in your life. Money is not everything. Yeah, you should actually human relations are much more worth than anything. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a great sentiment to sort of wrap up the podcast on. I do have a couple of last minute questions that I like to ask, and I feel like you might have heard them before from me, so we'll just get right into them. But what is your favorite strain of all time?
Ooh. Oh fuck. Fuck.
As a librarian, you have too many options, I'm sure.
That's a big problem. One of those would be the headband, and one of those would be the super silver haze.
Man,
That are so very different strains, right?
that's so funny that you said that, because headband is my partner's favorite strain, and super silver haze is the first strain we ever smoked together. So the odds that those are your two favorite strains is really funny.
Yeah, but they are combining the thing about cannabis what I really love. The energetic, racy sativas and the headstone,
Yeah.
couch log body, like like golf ball smell, you know. Like I'm
Yeah.
not really into skunks, you know. I was, and skunks are okay, but it's not my thing. I mean, you know, I
You
always
know,
liked, you know,
you do you like you know how the market has kind of changed into this whole like purple candy gas thing where that's all that people want. I feel like I'm one of the few people that has no problem with that because, you know, if it's sweet and gassy all at the same time, that sounds delicious. And
oh yeah.
the fact that we're going for all this photogenic quality to the buds that we're growing just makes it that much more enjoyable because there's always a visual aspect of picking up the flower, breaking it apart, grinding it up, rolling a joint, looking at it, you know, that's it's a whole part of the experience.
One of my favorite smokes in the last times now is American cut that I got from Finest. It is called Crostata, and it's Sunset Sherbet Biscotti Sunday Cross,
It sounds good.
and it's like it's candy gassy, which is
Yeah,
normally it's gassy, but it's very fruity.
sure.
It's very like fruit. It's unbelievable smoke.
Yeah. I do find it really funny when people are like, I don't want that. I want something, you know, I want some old good green weed. I'm like, feel free, you know. I don't mind that at all, but this stuff is really tasty.
It is. But sometimes when you then get this super silver haze again, which is really like green, you know, like light green, and then you smoke that like it's like the instant. If somebody comes into the room, he will be like instantly, you were smoking the amnesia,
Yeah,
because everybody here in this area they will tell you it's amnesia. Uh, Amnesia is super silver haze. That men don't. Not many people know that, but amnesia is just a coffee shop name for the weed.
for sure.
There was no amnesia. I mean, Soma will be angry now if I tell it like this. Soma released amnesia haze, but amnesia haze is just a super silver haze version. I
Sure.
mean, the super silver haze cross to some hazes, but the super silver was always shorter on the flowering time for hazes because hazes go more than 13 weeks, and the super silver hazes that we grew here are like 10 weekers, 10, 11 weeks maybe. Nobody goes to 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here. Some people do, but in general, people who grow for a market, they used to if they grow haze, they go for the amnesia for the super silver because it has this. Some even get it in 9 weeks. You can put it on the market in 9 weeks. You can.
Sure.
Actually, some people will think that it's ripe because it has the effect, it has the quality. But
Right.
if you go over 10 or 11 week, you have top shelf, you know, you have that's it. And that is, still long,
Yeah.
10 or 11 weeks for commercial production is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you can't because it like for the most part, you can if you produce really really nice sativa versus really really nice indica and just using those terms as a representation of the flowering time.
Oh,
So like
no.
an 8 week versus a 12 week, right? You can't then charge 1.5 times for the 12 week, right? If you're getting $1,000 per kilo, let's say, right?
Hmm.
You can't then of you know a runts or a candy or something like that, right? You then can't say, well, I have this super silver haze that I grew for 12 weeks. I want $1,500 per kilo.
No, you can do
You
that.
can't
No,
do that. No, no one's
no,
gonna
no,
say, oh, it's worth that much more because you grew it that much longer. They'll say this is still a
no.
pound of weed. I can only sell it for
Yeah.
so much per gram, right?
There is only, in this area here where we live, in the Balkans and Austria and here, these areas, the amnesia cut they call it the core cut. Core cut because a guy from England named Core, his synonym on the forum is Core, and he put out some cuts. That's why it's the Core cut, because one guy named Core put out the cut. So it's the Amnesia Core cut, which is Hypro Seeds. It's a Holland-based company, but actually the genetics as itself, as a parental genome, is the Super Silver Haze. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's basically just Super Silver Haze.
But they popped a lot of seeds to get this 9 to 10 weeker
right.
phenotype, which is so popular. Since 15, 20 years it's around here.
Wow.
And yeah, it's still people still grow that. And it's still around, it's still sold in many shops. But you have to understand that this is a very rare phenotype of Super Silver Haze. It's very rare because normally it's very productive and very fast finishing for a Super Silver.
Sure.
I mean, normally the Super Silver Haze will give you in 12 or 13 weeks a product like this one.
Wow.
You know? Yeah, it's... Yeah.
I mean, that's also why you can't change your price per pound on those things, because no one's going to say, oh, prove it that you grew it for 12 weeks, you know? Like, I found someone that grew this for 9 weeks. It's the same thing. So why should I pay you more?
Collie strains, the Collie strains came and they dropped the production of Amnesia here, the Shiva cut. Sure. The Super Silver Haze cut. It's grown very, very much less than it was before, just because of Collie strains.
Sure.
Because they took over the market here in the last 3 years. It is the last 2 years. It's crazy. 3 years ago it started. The first Collie strains came.
Yeah.
And now it's like it's going
everywhere. Yeah.
It's everywhere, and it's gonna go back also.
I think so.
Which is okay. It's okay.
Yeah, the market fluctuates. It's the demand for what people want is all based on what I feel like is commercialized, like what is popularized through Instagram or Reddit or all these other different forums, or even, in pop culture, right? You can have an artist of some band, or rap group, or even rock and roll, just all these different music genres where they'll mention some sort of cannabis strain in their music because it's just what's popular to them at the time, and all of a sudden the demand for it goes up and everyone's got to start producing that because there's just increased demand within the market. So it is a fickle market, and it is going to continue to fluctuate.
It is.
And I think that Headband and Super Silver Haze are also some of those they have a good foundation where I don't think they're going to go anywhere. People are always going to want them because they have good experiences with them. And so with those being your favorite strains, who would you say is your favorite breeder?
Shanti Baba.
Right off the bat. What makes him your favorite breeder?
His down-to-earth mentality. His when you meet him, you look him in the eye, you ask a question, he will tell you straight away.
Cool.
With no I mean, I love this kind of persons, down to earth so much, and the accomplishment. I mean, there will always be beefs again, some people will don't like him or something. I don't care. I met that guy and I talked to him, and I really loved the conversation, really.
Cool.
I mean, there is others, yeah. But
for sure,
straight away to say how much he is influential to me, and how much he has done for the community, and that he still is producing, keeping a low profile, and having much more love for his family than his business.
Yeah.
That is very impressive.
For sure. I mean, sometimes, breeding cannabis isn't rocket science, right?
No.
You can just have a little pollen chucking event and create some seeds, find something great, and all of a sudden you call yourself a breeder, right? So,
and they asked this Shanti, they asked him few years, 10 years ago, they asked him, so what are you doing? Because this time it was already, autoflower, feminized, was taking over the market everywhere. And what are you doing? What are your new strains? And he was looking like that. New strains? he did the CBD crew at that time, right? He had some new strains, but it was really scientific-based company which produced CBD-based strains, 1-to-1 ratios, like
Sure.
3-to-1 ratio, like really CBD strains. They produced it. So he knows about breeding, right? So when this guy was asking him about new strains, he was like, same old story, same
Yeah.
old. We do no feminized still, and we use males and females, So
Yep.
the old breeding techniques what we use, and that's the base. Why
Right.
why you have so much tools now today, labs that can pre-test if it's male or if it's female, sex testing. You have cannabinoids. You have everything more accessible today. So why not stay on the stable systems that provide good, stable genetics?
Sure. And then just apply the
Feminization,
analytics to it,
just
right?
apply to analytics for breeding purposes.
Right.
Then to have like for feminized production, okay, it's okay, but don't for breeding for purposes of collection and preservation. Feminization is not the point. You
Hmm.
pin it down to one phenotype selfing.
Sure.
That's not preservation.
No.
Preservation would mean open pollination and a lot of genome hidden in a group of family, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is preservation. And I think the real breeding has to do with preservation more than it has to do with pinning down to specific phenotype.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they are two different goals, right? One,
Two
if
different
you're
goals, yeah.
if you're trying to preserve genetics, then open pollinating, using large populations of plants to provide large phenotypic variants, so that you're not bottlenecking your breeding projects. That's one style. And then if you're, inline breeding, reverse back crossing, trying to lock down certain traits for production qualities or for desirable qualities for an end product, that's a totally different thing. And both
Totally
are
different.
valid, right? Because
Yes.
we like our drug cannabis. So it's going to require some very intensive breeding practices to get to something that people are really excited about versus, if it's just something where we're trying to make sure that we don't lose the access to a genetic pool for maybe future breeding practices or just for preservation's sake, just for the sake of preserving what's in that genetic pool, then yeah, goals one other. It really depends on what you're trying to do. And I agree. So I agree with what you're saying. It's when you have somebody like Shanti Baba who is, he's kind of sticking to what he knows, doing it as best as he can, and trying to perfect those practices versus creating or chasing some hype, right?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Again,
Exactly.
those are just two different mentalities and two different mindsets. So that's really, I see why you have a lot of respect for him in terms of trying to maintain stuff, especially as yourself, as a librarian of cannabis, maintaining things that are 20 years old. It's
Yeah.
hard work, and
And
there's not a
nobody
lot of
wants
people that
it.
want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, not a lot of people want it right now.
No,
I
but they will
still
in
keep
5 years,
it.
right?
Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
And always it's the same thing. People come back and they ask you, and then you know why you kept it for so long again. Because
Right.
from time to time you have these deals for these cards, and then still you are like, yes, And these people
Happy
come
that you
and
have it.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, and also they give you a feedback. Hey, thanks, man. It's the real thing.
Right.
Like for the plank cut, for example, I got a few months ago. I got like, hey man, thank you so much. We got the plank cut back again from you. It is the same thing that we used to smoke 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It
That's
is
it. I mean,
like
that's so
that's
cool.
it. That's it. This is the cut. That's it.
Yeah.
And that what for me was like, yes, if I have one of that kind of customers, I'm
It's worth
satisfied.
it. Yeah.
It's worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
I just have one more question for you then. What is the most memorable cannabis related experience that you have, whether it be smoking or growing or just anything cannabis related?
Ooh, wow. For example, definitely will be more than smoking, growing. It is even more a virus to me than using it as a drug, recreational drug. It is actually more the growing part was always more infectious for me
Sure.
than anything else. It's like, and a specific memory of cannabis would be, for example, smoking it in Spain, like, the best sativas in Spain, the bubble hash, the Moroccan hash that was imported, the Mongolian ditch wheat, all these kind of memories that you were smoking cannabis all around the world, but then the best homegrown weed was always here for me. Uh, I never I never saw better weed that I could produce it myself.
For sure. So it sounds just like, the growing aspect of it, like it's just a large memory all with a bunch of aspects tied together that, this just
Yeah.
been something that's been such a part of your history that maybe there's not just one that stands out, but kind of the overall aspect of there's been so many good memories, but the ones that always bring me back are the
One
homegrown
one
cannabis.
I have, my late dad, he died like 13 years ago, my
Okay.
father. And he was really one of the first hippie generations in Yugoslavia, They smoked hashish in the 70s, imported from Turkey. And he was like, also, he told me about LSD and those stuff, Like his idols were Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and
Yeah.
that stuff. I grew up with that kind of music. So, and actually, when he found the first Rizla, that I was like 12 years old, 13 years old, and he found the Rizla in my room.
What's a Riesla?
A Rizla is the paper, the smoking
Oh,
paper. The
gotcha.
big one,
Right.
not the
Yeah.
small one for tobacco. He found the big one, and he asked me, "What are you using them for?" And I said, "For tobacco." And he said, "Are you smoking big cigarettes right now, huh?" He said, so next day, man, he waited with a rolled joint, and he smoked with me the rolled joint. I was 13 years old, my father. It's like, you will first smoke with me, and then you can smoke with other people,
That's
you know.
cool.
And if you need weed, you come to me first, and that's what I did after
For
that.
sure.
It's like,
Because he knew
yeah,
what was good and not. Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome. I had a similar experience, and I'll get into that in a future episode. But I think when you have your first experience, or one of the really memorable experiences, if it's with like a parent or something, that's pretty cool. I
yeah.
think that's
Because
awesome.
he had, that is not bad parenting. Actually, he cared so much.
Right.
He cared as a parent that I would not get into bad circles,
Right.
because there was a lot of heroin, there was a lot of cocaine was not at that time, but there's a lot of drugs, man. It
Sure.
was really hardcore,
Yeah.
so better was that to know what your kids are up to is better than not knowing, right?
Absolutely. When there's a lot
So
of set and setting in terms of how you experience almost everything, right? Whether it be a drug or food or
yeah,
alcoholic beverage or even just, a concert, right? Something just like an experience. If you're in the right mindset and the setting around you has maybe an energy that you're looking for, or, if it's like an upbeat, positive thing, then you're going to experience it one way. If it's, negative, angry, you're going to experience it another way. And so to have someone who has as much care for you as, a parent potentially could, then you might maybe the idea behind it is to provide that set and setting where it's not going to be a problem and not an unenjoyable experience.
the sentence would be, do not deny your kids the education, ever.
Fair enough.
Ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's like rolling a joint, like, don't deny your kids the education,
Yeah.
like a 12-year,
Teach them.
look at, teach them.
I love that.
A little bit of joke aside, but it's a lot of truth in that.
No, absolutely.
Be honest to your kids. Be
Yeah.
honest.
Oh, I mean, if
That
you
is the
lie to them,
most you
they're
can
gonna.
do.
Yeah, if you
Oh, they,
telling them not to do something is the easiest way to get them to do something, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, by showing them that it's safe, that there is, that there is safe ways to consume cannabis, that there is, different products on the market, some that are that are good, some that are potentially bad, harmful. These are things that, yeah, I don't think that it necessarily needs to come from a parent, but someone who's
No, it won't
experienced,
be.
older, with care, and they're doing it from a place of care and concern versus punishment and authority, right?
Yes,
I
yes,
think that
yes.
that's a really important thing. Well, Sasha, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I
Yeah,
really
it was.
appreciate you. For the listeners that don't know, he just kind of hopped onto this podcast today because we had to pivot a little bit from another person that was going to be joining us. But we have been waiting to get Sasha's story about growing and a little bit more of his gardening techniques and thoughts behind that on here. So this was great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on today and doing this with me.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
It was nice to talk
absolutely.
to you.
It
Absolutely.
is. Getting this information out there, like I always like to say, it helps grow the community, and that's the way we grow.
That's the way you grow.
All right. Well, we'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye bye.